Hello, everybody. We're live. Amazing. We've got to this point. Hi, everybody. And welcome to Maple's webinar on how to optimize your Facebook ads following the iOS 14.5 updates. How are you today? Thank you so much for joining us today. It's going to be an amazing webinar, a lot of action items, a lot of amazing tips that you can actually use from the minute we end this webinar. Just before we start, a very, very short introduction. I don't want to take too much of our time to go really deep into all the tips here. I'm Rakefet. I'm Mayple CMO for the last 3 years. Before that, I was, helping CMOs in different brands, B2C, B2B, for almost 10 years. So I've been around in marketing for quite a while. I am more than honored and thrilled to introduce Will Perry, that is going to lead this session. Hi, Will.
Great to be here with you as always.
Same here. Will is one of Maple's top vetted experts. He's managed over $50 million in ad spend, so he's a lot of experience to share with you. And I wrote a small thing here. So he's actually the father of the Facebook Dragons, king of all things funnels, ad copy poet, and a dear friend.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this will be like a normal session for you and I here today.
Yeah,
we're all of our friends here virtually, so.
Exactly, we're used to it.
Yeah, that is true.
So first, amazing that you start writing in the chat. I'm located in Tel Aviv right now. Will, you are in?
Or downtown Orlando. So go ahead and throw into that chat where you guys are from. We'd love to know where you guys are calling in from.
Yeah, from Vegas. Like, wow.
Yep. Very cool.
Very cool.
So overall today, guys, really want to promise you, and then I'll turn it back to Rakefet here real quick, that truly we're going directly into action items, strategies. We're not going to spend 30 minutes on intro and all this build up. We're going straight into the good stuff. I can tell you, as someone who attended a very similar webinar about a week and a half ago, maybe some of you were on that webinar. No value was covered at all. Today, we're going to go directly into exactly what you need to start doing now. Like Hadera said, straight to the point, all the good stuff. So Rakefet, I'll turn it back to you to kick us off.
Amazing. I want to start with a very quick story of how I met Will. And basically, I'm a Mayple CMO, but I'm also a Mayple customer. And I've been struggling the same as everyone out there because of how the industry works on who to work with. And basically, even though I have experience in marketing, I really struggled, and based on a meeting, based on an interview, or based on anything else that experts and agencies. And I know there are so many amazing talents out there, but it was really hard to predict which will be a very good fit to what I need and to who to work with. So I met Will with an algorithm, basically. Maple's algorithm, this is what we do in Mayple. We vet experts based on real performance, not sales pitches, not reviews and stuff like that. We match them very accurately with brands to make sure, both sides are a good fit and they can work together from an experience and professional point of view, and also from a communication point of view, which is not less important. And then we're sticking with you, making sure everything works right. And this is exactly what we do. So basically, being super transparent here, Will is also managing Maple's campaigns, which is an amazing start.
I run all the ads personally.
Oh, yeah.
So proof to the pudding for you guys here today.
Exactly. And, just like you, we've also struggling and experiencing the iOS 14.5 updates and figuring out what to do. And this is why we're here. We want to share with you all the insights, and Will here is going to be leading this. So giving it back to you, Will.
Awesome. Is that my cue?
It is.
All right, perfect. So just to sort of tee that up real quick, guys, and then I'm going to do a screen share and we're going to walk through it. I can tell you that I was tired of hearing wait and see. We have to wait and see. I'm not going to hit you guys with anything about wait and see today. I have 7 specific strategies that my team and I are implementing, that some of which we've implemented with all of Maple's paid ads as well. Facebook, Google, YouTube, etc. So I'm going to go through that all in detail for you guys today. Bear with me. I tend to, really speak passionately on the subject. So, Rockefet will intentionally hit my pause button and help slow me down. So at any point too, what I want to mention is feel free to throw whatever questions you have into the chat.
Yeah.
Goal is to take about 45 minutes to run through these strategies. And then at the end, I'll stick around, longer than even an hour to answer every one of your questions. Officially, I've blocked off an hour today, but if there are some afterwards, feel free to hang on. Make sure you throw them into the chat. I'll do my best to answer every one of them.
One thing I just want to say before I put a code on the chat right now, just remember this code, write it down, just for you to have it. I'll speak about it at the end of our session. Just telling you it's worth $200, but we're going to speak about it later. I don't want to take much of your time.
Awesome. So what do you say? Let's do the thing?
Let's do that.
Let's do that. All right. So perfect. Share screen. Bear with me a second here, guys, while I get this pulled up. Oh, wait, hold on. I clicked the wrong one. This is not uncommon for me to do this.
We felt like we're going into...
Yeah, the time or something. Awesome. Oh, let me hit present on this as well. So there's our beautiful faces. So you guys, like I said, we're going to go directly into these strategies exactly today. Brief intro about myself, CEO and CMO of Reason. I do personally run all of Maple's paid ads as well. So you've probably seen hundreds of ads from us. Hopefully you have, at least anyways, meaning you're in the right place. So if you've been struggling with the reporting in your ad account, if you've been struggling to optimize, if you're a brand owner that you've experienced a decline in sales, you're in the right place here today. I'm literally going to share the exact strategies that I'm using with all of my clients, as well as with Maple's ads as well. So I'm sure that we have varying degrees of understanding, expertise, and maybe even some of this you guys might have implemented. So just bear with me with that as well. There is one specific recommendation that most of you have probably had or heard of, but for sake of the conversation today, we'll cover that, which is in step 3. So like Rockefet said, managed a ton in ads, work exclusively with e-com brands, health and wellness products, apparel, fashion, you name it. Spend a ton on Google ads as well. So 13 plus years in the industry. So I'm happy to be here to share what I see on a day-to-day to really help you guys out. So, everything is just going to be straight value bombs for you to really kind of set the scene here, and then we'll get into it. 6 things you need to do right now to improve your ad performance, why you need to change your mindset, and we'll go through that, and how to basically get around the iOS impact through the way that you test. And we'll go into very specific details on exactly how we test ads and how you can start implementing that process into how you're testing and scaling as well. It's really the secret sauce. So let's just get into it. So Rockefet, you think good to just dive into strategy number 1 here?
Yeah, can everyone see the poll actually I just posted?
Oh yeah, let's get a quick if you click on the poll there, how has your ads performance been hit by the iOS 14.5 updates? If you guys could go in there and drop in a vote, very much, just a little, not at all, I don't know. Would love to just sort of get a sense for, what you guys are experiencing. Yep. So if you can jump on over to that poll there, I'll check it, here in a couple minutes. Cool. Awesome. So, all right. So let's dig into it. Number 1, right out of the gate, looking at how we need to change our expectations centered around our ads. You can see this on your side, right, Rockefet? Everything's coming through okay?
Everything's coming through perfectly.
Awesome. So General, just sort of conversation here, guys. Overall, right out of the gate, one thing I really want to stress is that we really need to realize that things are not going to go back to how they were. And there's no more ignoring the data. We really need to evolve and take understanding of all of that data head on. I know that sometimes data, even the mentioning of data, can kind of be a scary thing. And as founders, as brand owners, or even maybe directors of marketing or et cetera of these e-com brands, like we can't stay away from that stuff anymore. Like e-com and ads is now survival of the fittest at its finest, right? Like the strong will prevail. And the brands that we've seen have the most success through this period are the ones that have the most control, or maybe control is not the best word, the most understanding, or the most like they have their finger on the pulse of their data the most. And what I mean by that is a topic that I'm going to touch on with regards to MER. So MER stands for Marketing Efficiency Ratio, and I'm going to tell you how to track that. But just to go into some further levels of understanding, through this whole iOS impact, debate, what basically has happened is it's really exposed every brand and also Facebook's way of tracking and attributing conversions, sales, purchases. Like that's how that data gets back into your guys' ad accounts, right? So when Facebook lost all of this data to be able to track, right, they lost the ability to be able to report conversions. And basically what has happened is the less conversions that are reported into the account, the algorithm has struggled to optimize through the AI, right? At the same time, Facebook has lost 75% of its reporting window. So for any of you guys who are familiar, what is this, probably 4 months ago, Facebook used to have a 28-day attribution window, meaning if somebody visited your sales page or your website today, August 25th, I could report that conversion up to almost the end of September, right? But what's happened is that window's been condensed down from 28 down to 7 days. So if we literally think about that, Facebook's no longer able to report this huge chunk of data in the ad account, let alone all of the opted out conversions, right? So the reason that I stress that level of understanding is a lot of brands didn't actually experience a decline in sales amidst this process. And some people are like, I'm a member of the AdLeaks Premium, which is really like one of the top tier media buying groups. And you'd see the conversation in the groups all the time that like, well, sales are still okay. I just don't know how to optimize ads. So I'm going to go through today what you need to do in order to optimize ads. Because I was struggling with the same problem, 3 months ago, like as we were continuing to connect these pieces, attending trainings, like talking with colleagues, et cetera, panning for all the gold. And so the reason I wanted to start with this level of understanding is like finding out where we were in order to show you where we need to go. Because if Facebook's, reduced its attribution window by 75%, and we're losing all this data in the ad account, the question becomes whether you're an advertiser or a brand, how do I optimize my ads? How do I track my ads? So one strategy I'm going to go through today is what we call closed loop funnels. That's about strategy number 4. So about halfway through, we'll get to that. The second thing I want you to start looking at is a blended return on ad spend metric, meaning I want you to look at all of your ad spend and all of your sales data together, and I want you to track it daily, weekly, and monthly. Because what's really happened is, to go back into this attribution and reporting dilemma, is that over the years as an advertiser, we always know that the brand judges us based on in-channel performance, meaning if a brand owner goes into the ad account, they say, how come I'm not getting my 3x or my 4x return on ad spend, right? So they're only looking at channel performance. And what I'm sharing with you guys today is I don't want you to look at channel performance anymore, because you can't trust and rely on the data. As an advertiser, I've always known to not trust and rely on the data. But I would say that level of understanding hasn't made its way to most brands and the founders or owners or even, the executive team of those brands, because Facebook had a very sticky sort of tracking model, right? So if you've ever noticed when you've run an email campaign, all of a sudden your return on ad spend goes up within the ad account, right? Like that's a direct correlation to what's called multi-touch attribution. And so Facebook would basically take credit for sales or conversions, et cetera, that actually didn't come from ads, right? And that's one of the biggest areas that's been impacted over the last, 60 to 90 days is Facebook is losing all of these other ways of attributing purchases back into the ad account that get you guys to spend more ad dollars, right? And the other thing is, man, I have a screenshot here for you guys when we talk about attribution. You would not believe how much overlap there is between Facebook and Google, right? And this is the other reason that I don't want you guys to judge channels individually anymore, because Google and Facebook take so much, let me back up a second. Facebook and Google would take credit for many of the same conversions in the past. And when you evolve to a last click attribution model, most of that and the majority of that starts to get cleaned up. So if you are using Hyros or Wicked Reports or RedTrack, for example, I'm going to go through a case study for you guys through Hyros. This is why those softwares work and why they're powerful, because it forces you to not look at individual channel performance, and it forces you as the brand to look at how is all of my advertising performing, knowing that these channels are working together and fueling each other. Because long story short, like Facebook fuels Google, and Facebook will also fuel your direct and organic channels as well. So I really wanted to touch on some of those new ways of thinking, and just a couple more pieces of that as well. I want you guys to stop looking at day-by-day performance in Facebook. Not only is it going to stress you the heck out, because Facebook has these up to 72-hour delayed windows now by which that they report conversions into the ad account, you're not seeing it in live in real time like you used to, right? So as media buyers, we look at our data in 3, 7, and 14-day windows. Like I'm looking for trends. And I want you guys to be looking for trends as well. Like I don't want you reacting to the day-to-day of ads, because when you react, you lose control. And when you lose control of the account, it's the same exact reason why you're not able to spend $100 to $300, or I'm sorry, $100 to $300K a month, $3, $4, $5, $10,000 a day, like some of us as elite media buyers do. It's because of reacting day to day to the account. I want us to also stop judging our apples and oranges, meaning Google and Facebook, individually. I want us to be looking at this model in a cohesive way. Because Google is mostly warm traffic. And if you've ever spent 6 figures plus a month in ad spend before, you know how much your Google ads pick up when you're running these other cold traffic sources, right? So Facebook is truly cold traffic. Like obviously there's remarketing and all of that. But for the most part, you're using the channel to acquire new customers that have never seen your brand, your products, anything like that before. And so what that means is that like if you have an in-house marketer, whether it's paid search, paid social, whether you're working with an agency or a contractor, if you guys are judging them separately and the channels aren't working together, you're not maximizing the performance of your advertising, because Facebook fuels Google and the Google team will reap the benefits of anything that you're running cold traffic wise. You could run connected TV, you could run YouTube, you could run Facebook, TikTok, etc. That's going to get scooped up in your shopping campaigns and your branded search and your non-branded search if you're running display ads as well. Google is most often going to outperform most channels on most occasions. So if you're truly trying to scale, if you're trying to, get to, multiple 6 figures a month in sales, it's really starting to look at these channels as working together. So let's quickly touch on marketing efficiency ratio and stick with this topic of how do we actually analyze or judge is probably the better word, our ad performance on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. So we've agreed now that we're going to stop looking at channel performance. Obviously we're going to still look at it from an optimization perspective, but we're going to stop judging it individually. We're going to start looking at trends and patterns. We're going to stop reacting in the day-to-day. We're understanding that Facebook is losing reporting, right? I'll touch on Google Analytics and channel reporting here shortly. And I want us to be looking at spend and revenue and looking at that as a blended return on ad spend daily, weekly, and monthly. So let's say you spend $100,000, a month in ads and you generate $300,000 in revenue. I want you to be tracking that on a week by week and a month by month sort of perspective, because what's probably happening is you're running all of this Facebook traffic, and a lot of those sales are being attributed to like organic in Google Analytics, or they're being attributed to direct in Google Analytics, or they're being uncategorized, right? So all that's happened is Facebook's lost the ability to track the sale. It doesn't necessarily, like, yes, some brands have for sure seen a decline in sales, but it's also a multi-layered scenario. Like, did you decrease ad spend because you weren't tracking it? But that's why I want us to be looking at MER, because if sales are still staying within range, right? So I'm doing, 10 grand a day in sales, and I'm usually around 10 grand a day in sales, then I can judge based on pulling individual levers within my traffic system, like what's performing best week by week, and I'm not reacting day to day. And I would say truthfully, like, this is how in-house CMOs, VPs of marketing, as a previous, CMO within a company and director of marketing as well before, starting Reason 5.5 years ago, like, this is how I judged ad performance. I judged ad performance based on the collective of my marketing and advertising and adjusting things week by week and month by month, not reacting day to day. Facebook has almost made it so easy for us to print money over the years that, like, we've been able to get away with sloppy advertising, sloppy marketing, not knowing our data, not knowing how the reporting works and things like that. And so I want you guys to embrace the data. I want you to embrace tracking the efficiency of your ad dollars. And, if this is an area that might prompt some questions, so I would definitely encourage you guys to ask that, in the chat, and we can touch on that, later on towards the end of the presentation. So that's
in a sense.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, just in a sense, it actually gave us also the opportunity to see in a clear way the complexity of our customers' journey until they buy. So until today, it was like, okay, I'm putting money on Facebook and I'm getting, sales, but it doesn't really work like that from a consumer point of view. They're going through more channels. They need more touch points as we go. And what happened here really revealed that in a very, strong way that we need to start dealing with. We need to start analyzing.
Yeah, for sure. Like, so here's a story that I hear all the time is like, I run all these ads and then I never see it reflective in my bank account, right? So like, if you've ever said that as a business owner, it's because Facebook has taken so much credit for marketing activity that was what we call in the industry a view through attribution, or maybe like it was the fifth touch point of someone being engaged with your brand, but maybe they came to you directly, first, and then they opted into your pop-up, and then they were on your email sequence, and then they saw your ad. Facebook takes credit for that sale based on the fact that it triggered the sale, but it wasn't the first engagement with your brand, right? So it makes this entire tracking system super messy, which is why, like, really honing in on this and tracking all of your channels together is what I'm sort of trying to encourage you guys to do, because it'll drive you crazy. Because obviously Facebook has an incentive to track as much as possible, so everybody spends more in ad dollars, right? So that's the part that's been significantly impacted over the last, few months. So yeah, definitely a good summary there from you, Rakafet. So guys, feel free to, drop those questions about that, in the chat. So one thing I just wanted to sort of show you, like the software that I'm using I have no affiliation with them. Like I don't have a affiliate code or anything like that. I use Databox. So in Databox, I build these custom reports where I can track these metrics that I was referring to you guys. I can track total spend. I can track total revenue. As a CMO, like this is what I want to see. And I'm not making decisions in platform so much by reacting to some super siloed view of what I'm seeing in my ad account, right? Like, I want you, like, this is how a director of marketing will look at it. So if you're thinking enterprise level company, they're tracking trends and patterns. This is a live, or was live when I took the screenshot 2 days ago, of a client account. And, so using Databox to track your spend, track your revenue, track your blended cost per acquisition, track your blended return on ad spend, and look at that over a week by week basis and literally change that reporting, window to a 7-day window and look and see how that is, right? Like if you've ever wondered why, like, Rockefet, I'll pick on you a little bit here because we've had this conversation a couple times. Oh, ads are down today. Ads are down today, right?
Sure.
As an experienced media buyer, cool as a cucumber, right? Like, because I know that there's going to be 2 out of 7 days that we're going to lose, right? Like just straight up as an advertiser, like, because I have experience spending millions of dollars, like humbly, like I know that there are going to be days that just don't hit. Like Facebook is an auction. And, we're making bids here. I mean, it's the same thing with Google as well. And so we need to be looking at trends and patterns, like the brands, the advertisers, the founders, whoever's running the ads that react day to day, they're most often the ones that struggle to scale. And I can tell you as, prior, like when I took over the Mayple account, we weren't even coming close to spending the amount that we're spending now. Like we've hit, much different levels of scale. We're driving, more leads than we ever have, in that amount of time. But it comes with obviously the experience for sure. Again, humbly. But then 2, like not reacting to the day-to-day, right? And then having these other reporting mechanisms in place to be able to make decisions. So I wanted to share with you guys what I'm using and what our team is using. We started out using Google Data Studio, and we basically built these reports the same way using Supermetrics integration. The Supermetrics integration was really too slow for us in regards to how the data was loading. So that's why we migrated to Databox. These reports are super fast, like they're very much live. And so definitely would encourage you to check that out as a way of like getting this new way of thinking. Like I want you guys to make decisions from this dashboard, not from Facebook. And that's really like strategy number 1. Make decisions from this dashboard, not from Facebook, because it'll drive you crazy. So that's strategy number 1. Going to go into strategy number 2. So this is something that you guys can implement right away is offline conversion tracking. I can even share with you the exact Zapier integration later on as well. So basically, so now we have this understanding, I think everybody knows by this point, Facebook has lost data into the ad accounts, right? Like we're not reporting or we were not reporting as many conversions or purchases. And even if you're using Facebook Conversion API, Shopify specifically or WooCommerce are still not able to track as many conversions as what they reported to originally be able to do. The reason that I know that is, and I'm just going to jump to the next slide here real quick, is, if you've ever, I know this might be a little small, so I apologize, guys. If you've ever gone into Events Manager in the back end of Facebook, you'll see all of your events, right? So purchase, add to cart, initiate checkout. Those are the most important ones. And once you connect that Facebook conversion API, native integration directly through Shopify, for example, it automatically becomes a browser to server tracking setup, meaning first party versus third party setup. I'm sure you've heard this whole conversation around first party data and third party data. So basically what's happening is, so this screenshot on the left is an actual screenshot probably about 45 days ago from one of my clients. And Facebook with Conversion API was only able to match, and you can see it because it says browser server, super small, I know, but here, wait, let me see if maybe I can zoom in on this, if it'll let me zoom in. No, it won't let me zoom in. But the one on the left says 4.6 out of 10, right? The one on the right says 7.8 out of 10. So I just literally made a 30 to 35% swing of purchase matching from my order data that is now pulling directly back into the ad account. And the way that we did this is, now I'm going to jump back, is this Zapier integration. So even if you have Facebook Conversion API connected to your website, Shopify or WooCommerce, most of you are going to be on Shopify or WooCommerce, Zapier, so for Orin, Zapier is able to take all of the order data, push it back through what's called an offline event, and then match, because we're collecting IP address, email, phone number, and some other parameters on the customer, it expands the data set. So it expands the data set and makes it possible, because Shopify's third-party data, it's possible to then match that data back to a purchase, right? And so the one thing that I want to point out here, guys, is I'm even seeing a little bit of over-reporting in some ad accounts. So I just want to be transparent with you that I'm even seeing some over-reporting, and I honestly would probably need 30 minutes to an hour to just talk about this one topic. But what I want you to do is go set up the Zapier integration, import your order data directly to Facebook, set up an offline event, and then connect that data directly to your pixel, or essentially your ad account. And Shopify is going to start pushing that order data back to the purchase event. That's exactly how we were able to improve the purchase matching, even with CAPI, even with Conversion API. So I want you guys to go set that up. And I've got a couple of case studies here. So this one client, that we're working with, spending, $3,000 a day, went from 4.6 to 10, or I'm sorry, 4.6 out of 10 to 7.8 out of 10. Then I have another men's fashion brand also spending $3,000 to $4,000 a day, 7.2 out of 10, that was then able to get to 9 out of 10. So the reason this is important is, if we're asking the question, how do I optimize in my ad account right now? This is one very specific strategy that I had to dig for gold in order to share with you guys here today. This is working in ad accounts, like any, we work on a lot other than just Shopify. So like for Mayple, for example, they actually had to set up a custom integration using Facebook developer tools in order to push that data back to the event, because the Mayple website, for example, is a completely custom, structure, right? So like that native integration doesn't exist for WooCommerce or Shopify like it did here, but a sort of similar setup. So you can use Zapier to do this. Zapier basically takes all of the order data from Shopify and can push it back to Facebook. One really specific detail that I want to touch on that I want you guys to make sure that you include in this setup is the order ID. The order ID is going to make sure to eliminate as much overlap of reporting as possible. So really make sure that you have that order ID in there, so Shopify can track that back to an ad on Facebook. So that's strategy number 2. I want you guys to set up offline conversions specifically with your Shopify order data to get that data back to your Facebook ad account. Any thoughts there, maybe from you, Rockafet? Anything that you think might need like further clarification or expansion there?
I think a lot of people will need the instructions and kind of help on how to do it, and we'll definitely send it over, so don't worry. In the follow-up email, part of that will be, instructing you and helping you and how to do it. This is why we're here. We're here to help. So you're going to get all the information you need in order to do it yourself as well.
Awesome.
But definitely, are very actionable and something you can, do tomorrow in order to improve the mesh rate on your accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. Truthfully, I saw a turnaround of this within 24 to 48 hours. So like you guys will see results right away. Just I'll answer both these questions real quick. Oren asked what parameters other than ID. You're going to need the email address, the email address, the order ID, and then there's a variety of other pieces to the setup. So there are a couple of other data points there. Phone number is another one, so you can pull that from there as well. The UTMs. So I'm going to go through redefining your UTM structure here actually on the next one. And then, yes, there is a cost to Zapier. It's very inexpensive. I think it's like, depending on how, guys, if you're getting thousands of orders a month, like it might cost $200 a month. Like it's not very expensive. Like even the basic plan, I think is like 20 or $30 a month. So, cool. So good wrap ups there on that. You can see the matching. So this is the part, I'm not going to waste your guys' time on this one so much because you've probably heard this at this point, but I still want to cover it anyways because I'm still auditing accounts right now that have not followed these steps that were almost recommended 6 months ago. So I'm just going to touch on this briefly. So new setup best practices. So number one,
I would just say, sorry that I'm jumping in because, you just said something and I think it's super important because a lot of people don't really know what's happening within their accounts. They don't really know if all the best practices that are relevant to right now and not to 1 year ago were implemented, if the experts they work with are up to date in terms of what they do. And it's super important because sometimes you just don't know, right? I mean, things are happening in the account. You speak with, whoever you work with, if it's an in-house, if it's an agency, if it's an expert, it's really hard to know whether those things are really implemented, whether everything is really up to date, and whether they're talking with Facebook. You're talking with Facebook quite, often, and you get updates and you're trying to realize what would be the next steps to do. And when you work with someone, it's super, super important to make sure they are, in the know of what you need right now and not, 1 year ago.
Yeah, I probably take that for granted, honestly, just because like as a digital marketer, basically like I have to be on my game. Like I have to be ahead of the curve. And I would say, it's the top 10 or 20% of us that are going to be ahead or on top of it, right? Like, just like in anything else, the 80-20 principle applies. And yeah, I mean, I've probably seen 50% of the accounts that I audit week to week still are missing these parts. So yeah, you're right. Like these new setup best practices are being missed. I would bet there's probably a good majority of you on this call, on this training today that probably have not set this up. So let me just recap that. Right away then. So, we started doing this probably 6 months ago. The actual native integration with Facebook and Shopify was released during Q4 of last year, which was a disaster. So I'll digress from that part. So anyways, so Facebook now allows for a direct integration with Shopify. So if you've gone to that Facebook channel in your Shopify account, most of you are probably on Shopify. You're going to be able to directly integrate the Facebook conversion API right there from your Shopify account. So that's sort of like, that's that step number 3. But what you'll need to do is go into Facebook, go into the area that says data sources, and you're going to need to verify your domain. So if it's www.mayple.com, www.reasonagency.co. You're going to go in there and you're going to verify that domain, meaning you're the administrator of the domain, and you're then going to show Facebook that you're connecting this domain to this specific pixel and ad account. So that's step 1. If you need to just do a quick, Google search for a YouTube video on how to verify your domain, or you can find it, in the Facebook, help section. I'm not going to go into the total nuances of that for you today. Then the second part of that is you need to define what is called aggregated events measurement. So in the past, Facebook would just automatically give you access to the purchase event, the add cart event, the view content event, the initiate checkout event. But because of all of this data loss, that's what has forced the verification of the domain. And you have to go in and actually what's called prioritize those events. So for 95% of you, it's going to be the purchase event. That's priority number one. Then you're going to list out add to cart, initiate checkout, view content, maybe landing page view, maybe add payment info. But for the most part, some of you might even be running custom conversions depending on your setup and structure. You're going to want to define that there as well. So the reason you want to define this now is that Facebook will not be able to track those events properly to the best of its current ability, air quotes, current ability. You have to actually manually do that. Like that's a manual setup that everybody has to do in addition to the Facebook conversion API. So just follow those 3 steps. You can do, a quick Google search. You'll find videos on how to set those things up, but just take those 3 things as very clear action items. It'll, if you're the administrator on all of your accounts, you should be able to do it, within an hour or so max. Maybe even 10, 15 minutes for those of you who are really savvy with it, where everything is. That's just pretty straightforward and to the point. So that's strategy number 3. So Rockafet, anything there that you think we might want to expand on?
I think what's sometimes is missing from the brand's point of view is, sometimes it looks a little bit vague when we talk about, things to be done in the accounts, because typically the brands themselves are not doing that. So I think something that maybe we won't do right now, but maybe on the follow-up, just show a few examples of, where do I aggregate my events? What does it mean? So definitely we'll expand more on that, because right now we're 42 minutes into our session. Obviously we won't be able to share every small details on how to do that. It wouldn't be this kind of training, but super important for you also just to get to know those areas in the account, making sure the experts you work with, the agencies you work with are on top of things, and so you'll be able to actually implement everything that is Will is sharing with you here.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we can even do like some post recap videos or something like that. Cool. So that's new setup best practices. Now I want to dig into attribution and tracking. I'm going to start to pick up the pace here a little bit, guys, because I want to make sure that I get through everything for you. Feel free to, hang on a little bit longer if you need to as well. Our actual attendance rate has stuck almost right from the beginning. So I'm hoping that you guys are really enjoying the content. Would actually love to know on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 meaning that this content sucks, 5 meaning that it's fantastic. Would love if you could just drop me some
adding a poll. Okay, I'm adding a poll.
Okay, we're gonna add a poll. Perfect. Yeah, because then otherwise the chat's just gonna get crushed with numbers there. All right, cool. So again, this is I apologize, if some of you guys are unfamiliar with some of these things, but I'm just going to come straight at you, like I said, with some of this higher level stuff that you need to go do. So at minimum, take notes, write these things down. You can have them as action items, even if you have to do some additional research, afterwards. The next thing that I want to touch on is what you need to do to clean up Google Analytics to start getting this data back right in front of you. So you really need to redefine your entire UTM structure. If you're not familiar with what a UTM is that piece of code, a parameter that you can actually attach to your ad. If you've ever seen those super long URLs, that's where the UTM comes from. So you could do a Google search on, what a UTM is and where to find it. But for those of you who do know what a UTM is, I'll show you exactly the UTM that I'm using now. So that's going to be on the next slide. why you need it, and how it's going to help you make decisions. Then what I'll then show you how to do is how to create a custom report in Google Analytics where you can actually recreate your Facebook data based on these UTMs away from Facebook, and only track sales based on clicks only. So pretty good gold mine there with that part overall. Again, take with a grain of salt that Google Analytics is not perfect either. No attribution and reporting tool is. The second area I'm going to touch on is Hyros. I'm a big advocate of Hyros. For full transparency, I am an affiliate of Hyros, but it's because I've tested all of them, and it's the one that I like, and it's the one that works the best. And so I have a case study for you of how we're using Hyros. I know that you've seen the ads. I know you've seen the ads for Hyros and Wicked Reports and Aribi and all the things. I've tested all of them. I've done demos with all of them. And Hyros is the one that we've decided to implement, across the board. So I'll go through that and what it means to adopt a last click attribution model. And if we go back to our first slide, when we agreed that we're going to work off of blended return on ad spend now, you're going to see why that is super important, because I'm getting a 12x return on Google and a 1x return on Facebook, but I'm generating $400,000 a month in sales. And so you'll see actually how much in the past, about 50% of the conversions that would come from Facebook are actually coming from Google. So when you adopt that last click attribution model, you're going to see how much overlap there actually is that I was mentioning to you there early on. And this is a brand where, we've doubled, even tripled their sales this year, and actually 6x their monthly return on ad spend. And this was previously a 7-figure business. So still working with them. They're actually in process of fielding offers to exit the company now, because of how well things have gone. So cool. So this is the first part. So action item number 1 is going to be to clean up your channel report in Google Analytics. So the amount of clean Google Analytics accounts that I've come across throughout the years are very few and far between. So the reason that you want to do this is, remember, now we're adopting this blended metric, right? Like, we're adopting the fact that a lot of my Facebook conversions are probably going into this other category, right? A lot of my conversions are probably getting attributed to direct. They're probably getting attributed to organic search, right? Because Facebook's no longer able to track them. This is an actual screenshot from one of my client accounts where the channel report is cleaned up based on paid search, paid social, display ads, email, etc. And this is how you're then going to be able to see a cohesive look into how your channel's performing, like how much revenue am I generating, and giving grace to the fact that and committing to the fact that this is not perfect, right? And that's what I'm really trying to stress, is that this is not perfect, but what I'm trying to help you guys do is get closer. And in reality, like, this whole Facebook thing has actually kind of done us all a favor, really, because we've relied so much on what Facebook has been telling us, and like we've just trusted it, right? Like, we're just like, oh yeah, Facebook says I'm getting a 5x, but to go back to that conversation of, but I'm not seeing it in my bank account. For those of you that are much further along, and like you have a CFO, or like you have an accounting team that's ripped through your P&L and has actually told you how much profit you're actually making, this is why. Right? This is why, because it has to do with tracking and attribution and getting a true sense for how your marketing is actually performing. And so, as you can imagine, I've also had to become, I wouldn't go as far to even, I've had to understand things from a CFO level. Let's just put it that way as well. Like, as a CMO and a CEO, even into the digital marketing, so that I can coach you guys up. And that's just, over the years, but I want you to clean up your channel report, because it's actually going to be very important with how you're going to redefine your UTM structure. So let me just skip ahead real quick, actually. So, like I said, the UTMs are that little piece of code that you're going to add to your Facebook ad, or to your TikTok ad, or to your Snapchat ad. And you can actually recreate your Facebook reporting in Google Analytics through what's called a custom report. So that's what that other screenshot was. It was a custom report from an actual client account. This is an actual screenshot of a Mayple ad. So we use these naming conventions in our campaigns so that we can actually identify which ads are working based on the UTM, which audience is working based on the UTM, and which campaign that is coming from. So I know that this might look a little bit small for you guys, but my exact UTM that I'm using, which is a little bit different than Maple's UTM, but this is what I use for ecom, is right here in this slide, right? So again, I know that this is a little bit advanced, but the campaign tag is going to allow you to use your campaign name. So our team does an amazing job of defining campaign names. We have a very specific campaign names that we use in every account. That's going to then pull into Google Analytics. Then you're going to use the term tag, which is going to pull your audience, right? So if you do a good job of labeling your audiences, you'll then be able to correlate an ad again back to the audience, back to a campaign. And then that content UTM is going to pull the actual ad name. So we use a structure of which is that an ad creative is, for example, 1022, like you see here, and the actual ad copy is A or B. So then when I'm looking at my reporting in Google Analytics, which I'm going to jump back to now, like this is an actual screenshot from a client account where you can actually see like these UTMs based on those naming conventions being pulled back into Google Analytics. So you're going to go into Google Analytics, you're going to build a custom report, and then you can recreate all of your data, your traffic, your purchases, your conversions, your revenue, your return on ad spend, etc. And then you can compare the two. That's the reason for doing this. Then you can compare your actual clicks to conversions, guys, your actual clicks to sales from ads back to the ad account. Now what's going to happen, and this is a guarantee, your cost per acquisition will go up within your ad account. It will guaranteed to go up. Why? Because this is the new source of truth. So on the first slide, I didn't cover it, but clicks to conversions are the source of truth. Like Facebook has reported email as attributed to ads. It's reported SMS that's been attributed to ads. It's reported Google traffic that's been attributed to Facebook ads. It's reported influencer traffic to Facebook ads. It has reported, what's the one I'm missing? I think for some reason I'm drawing a blank on the other one, right? But like it's reported all of these other sources, affiliate, back into your Facebook ads, right? And now you're getting a true sense for someone saw this ad, they clicked this ad, they bought from this ad. Your cost per acquisition will go up because Facebook this is what I was looking for. Facebook is losing view through attribution, right? This doesn't take into account if someone saw your ad. This only takes into account if someone clicked on your ad. So that's what I mean by your cost per acquisition will go up in the ad account. That's why we have to look at blended return on ad spend, blended cost per acquisition, MER, right? Look at everything together because you're actually getting true data now. That's what I mean by Facebook is, right? It's actually Apple. I misspoke. Like Apple, if you want to take the positive look on it, Apple is doing us a favor because you're getting closer to understanding why it's not been reflective in your bank account. Because we haven't been looking at the truth with regards to that data. So now I'm going to give you a screenshot. Again, this is a lot. Like you can see, I just took this screenshot yesterday on August 24th or 25th. And this is an actual Hyros account. This is an account that, we're generating $500,000-$600,000 a month in sales, spending 80 to 100 grand a month in Facebook and Google ads. And, in the last 60 days, we've only spent 15 grand on Google ads, but we've generated a 12x return. And all of that has to do with Facebook, right? So when I look at this in a blended scenario, if I were to actually look at my actual data here and judge Facebook purely on last click, I'd have to turn everything off. Like I'm actually judged on a 2x return on ad spend in Facebook 6 months ago for this client, but we're getting like 7x blended return on ad spend with Google and Facebook together in top line sales. But like what Hyros is going to show you is that I'm only getting a 1x return based on actual clicks to conversions. So like some of you might be like, oh, that's terrible. But like, guess what? If I go cut that 70K a month in ad spend, that system dies, right? Like I don't scoop up the $130,000 or $40,000 in sales this month on Google with that 12x return if I don't look at a blended model on a last click attribution and the conversions only reported once. Like we're not like one time, like not Google, like Google's not reporting the conversion and Facebook's reporting the conversion. Like this is what happens when you only track the conversion one time. This is why if you work with a Google and a Facebook ad agency, you can't judge them separately. There's overlap. There's so much overlap. And so what I'm doing here, guys, is I'm exposing this underbelly that most of you, like we've all known it as marketers, but like that information hasn't gotten back to you guys because we're judged based on data in the ad account, right? But if I was a VP of marketing or a CMO in-house, I know this stuff, right? Like my guys who are, and gals who are, CMOs of, 8-figure brands, this is how they look at it. They look at blended CAC. They look at blended CPA because it's impossible to track when you're running multiple channels to a degree. So you have to sort of look at these trends and patterns. So this is an actual case study from Hyros, that I'm using on a 7-figure brand, multiple 7-figure brand, 6-figure spend pending the month. And transparency, like I'm happy that I'm getting a 1x on Facebook, guys. I'm happy. This brand is crushing it because Google is scooping up. Like people see my Facebook ad and then they go Google it on Google, they go Google it. And then that last click picks them up, right? Multi-touch conversion and attribution. So that's what I'm referring to there. So that's strategy number 4. So I'm going to quickly go through closed loop funnels. This is another way of tracking your sales. I know that we're getting tight on time, so I'm going to do these last 2 quick, and then we'll do questions.
So just to say to the people that have meetings or they need to jump to another, we will send this over recorded, so you'll have everything. You can always access the webinar. You can always ask us more questions. If you're leaving us, remember to share with other businesses, with other marketers. We're here to help us help others, and we'll continue to the rest of the webinar right now. If you want to stay, obviously, welcome to stay, and let's move on.
Yep, for sure. So for a current client, I'll show you what I mean by this, closed loop funnels, so DOBAR. So closed loop funnel basically means if we think back to the slide where we were looking at the data box report, there's another way that you can track performance based on how you set up your actual funnel. So with this one specific product and brand and client, I've set up a funnel with a unique URL, with a unique offer, with a unique product SKU, with a unique permalink, with unique pop-ups and unique upsells. So this is by definition a closed loop funnel. And what then you will do is you'll then run your Facebook ads directly to this specific sales page, and then you can track spend versus revenue generated from those specific SKUs, right? So now let's say you spend, $1,000 a day and you're generating $2,000 a day, right? And you can actually track that actual performance, also knowing that there's going to be spillover to your website. There's going to be spillover into that direct channel in Google Analytics and organic and email and Google, right? So then you're starting to look at total lift of running this strategy. So I'm going to show you exactly what this looks like. So this is DOBAR. This is a client helped doubled their revenue this year as well. Shark Tank brand, 7-figure brand. So anyways, like we created this offer. Some of you guys might even seen these ads, probably about October or November of last year. So we're still running this offer to this day. this variety pack offer. And the only way that you can get to this offer is through Facebook, right? So it's not being pushed through email. It's not being pushed through SMS. It is being pushed through Google. But then what I'm able to do is all of my ad spend and all of my traffic is being directed towards this asset, which has its own URL. It has its own product SKUs. It has all of these buttons down at the bottom. You can kind of see it. There's an offer section where those links are set up with specific codes. So if someone picks option number 1, that code fires based on the click from that exact sales page. Same thing for offer number 2, same thing for offer number 3. Then I have specific upsells on that funnel, and I have specific pop-ups on that funnel. So if you're a brand that, you know, only has a couple of SKUs, or if you adopt what's called an anchor product strategy to your acquisition, which this is, a lot of times we'll scale. Like I've probably generated 7 figures just on this offer, just by refining the acquisition strategy around one message and one offer, right? And so then, you know, they've got, obviously there's spillover to the website, people buy other stuff, but all of my ads are running specifically to this offer. And so, you know, I have a blended CPA of about $30 to $35 on this offer that I can track very specifically, because the traffic's only going to this asset, right? And so then if you have that data box report, you can look at how that specific offer is performing. You can look at spend versus revenue, and you're using a controlled setup to track your performance on a week by week and a month by month perspective. Then you can take that into consideration with the rest of your marketing. And
a question here, maybe. Yeah. Budget versus closed loop funnel. What would be, you know, a minimum budget you would put per funnel? Obviously, you need, you know, enough events, enough volume in order to really create those funnels.
When I launch a new funnel like this, I'm looking for $200 to $300 a day. Like that's kind of like a baseline that I like to test from. You know, allows me to run, you know, 4 to 5, 6 creatives, you know, 6 to 8 audiences in testing at the same time. You know, at $25 a day budgets, 10 ad sets, that's $250, you know, right there already. So, you know, 30% is going to win, 30% is going to lose, and 30%, you know, is going to be hanging out there in the middle. So, you know, maybe you'll have 3 ad sets and 1 or 2 creatives that perform from doing that. So this is for sure a I mean, we adopted this strategy a year ago, and it was because conversion rate is like 5%, you know, on this. So, you know, you can actually increase conversion rate as well by running the strategy this way. And this is actually going to a Zipify page. So for those of you who are on Shopify, this is a Zipify page, you know, but the reason that it works is the offer, the messaging, you know, the targeting and knowing who the audience is, etc. But controlling that setup will allow you to actually track your progress independent of Facebook overall. So yeah, good question there, Rockafet. So just one more section here for you guys, and then we'll get into testing. So, we'll get into questions. So which was a good transition from that last piece. So, you know, if you're struggling to optimize your ads, it has a lot to do with your setup, right? Which has to do with that closed loop funnel. If you're struggling to then scale those ads, it has a lot to do with how you're testing and scaling overall. And so I wanted to share with you guys the secret sauce. So this is the secret sauce to the way that I media buy and that I train our entire team on, is through ad variable isolation. So if you guys remember back to, you know, when you were in middle school, right? And you would run a scientific experiment, like your teacher would always tell you that a scientific experiment has a control and a variable. The problem is 95% of media buyers and agencies and brands run their ads with multiple variables in the setup, and they never know why an ad is working or not. And that is more exposed now than ever, because if you're losing all of this data and you have multiple variables in your ad, and by variables, I mean, you know, if you're running ads that all have different headlines and different like images and and different ad copy, like you're never going to know which ad is working and why, or even which piece of the ad is working and why. But when you adopt this method and this philosophy of ad variable isolation into your testing system, both through audience testing and creative testing, this is how we are able to, and elite media buyers are able to significantly reduce cost per acquisition so that you guys are able to reduce that return on ad spend. So we've talked all about this reporting. We've talked all about how to view the data, how to track the data, how to look at it, how to clean it up, etc. Now, when you implement this testing philosophy into the way that you media buy, you're going to gain significant clarity, specifically within the ad account. So there's a specific example here with you. So I'm using again the Dobar example where we use a account structure that is called SVST method, which stands for single variable split testing, which means we have 3 basic top of funnel campaigns for cold traffic. Phase 1, audience testing. Phase 2, creative testing. Phase 3, scaling. So all of that work is done in your phase 2 and your phase 1 campaigns to identify winning audiences and winning combinations of copy and creative. And it's super important to isolate these variables through your setup. And I have a live example for you. So I know that maybe the screenshots in the top right might be a little bit small, depending where you're watching this from. But we talked a little bit about naming conventions before. And so the only difference within this exact ad set, so this ad creative with the pink donut glaze, for example, that the only variable in this exact ad set is the ad copy only. It has the same headline. It's running with the same offer to the same audience. And the only variable is the combination of the creative and the copy. So if I'm launching a new image that I want to test, I want to be using proven ad copy only. So eliminate that as a variable. Proven headline only. Proven offer only. Because then I can tell you with 110% confidence that this combination of copy and creative was the winning ad, right? So then you can obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, then you can go scale that ad because you know that it's the winning ad. And I can honestly tell you that very, very, very few actually test this way. But it's the reason, for example, like that Hyros account that I mentioned to you guys was able to reduce cost per acquisition 35% in 14 days by doing this, spending, again, 6 figures. We actually had a Mayple client. We worked together with a Mayple client where we reduced cost per acquisition by 39%, and we were spending $200,000 a month, guys, by implementing this testing philosophy. Most people do not have control over their testing setup, which means that they're lacking clarity on their ads, what's working with those ads and why. And it's the exact reason why you're not able to scale to $10,000 a day or even $3,000 or $5,000 a day, is by not having that testing system and having a controlled testing environment. So that's my last sort of recommendation for you guys today. If this is something that you want to implement, I would encourage you to do a little bit more research on it. I know Rockafet probably has a couple of things that she wants to wrap up on, which she can absolutely do. The only thing that I would leave you guys with is that if you found this to be valuable and you want help implementing these strategies, go ahead and apply on Mayple.com to apply to work with us. We'd love to help you guys. Super soft sales pitch. We're not going to hit you guys with much of anything else. If you need help optimizing and scaling, give us a shout. Rockafet's going to give you that code for you guys to redeem, and then I'm going to hang around and answer questions.
Yeah, so I'm sending this right now as we speak. One thing I wanted to tell everyone, first, thank you so much for joining us today. It's the first live webinar we're having. We're planning to have much more, and I hope you saw and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you really felt it gives value. That was the purpose. And this is the purpose what we do in Mayple in general. We're here to help brands scale. We're not here to sell. We're here to help. So whenever, whatever stage you're in, and if you're ready to scale, and if you need help of experts and people that have gone through a vetting process. And I think, we're kind of walk the talk with what Will showed here. You can see, what type of people we have on our network. Definitely people that will be able to take you to those numbers you're looking for, to the growth you're looking for, and to actually fulfill your potential as a business. This is why we're here. This is our role in the world. So just give me 1 second, and I will send you exactly, everything here. And here we go.
On my side too, just want to thank everyone for attending. Overall, you guys were pretty locked in, the whole time. I know that it's a lot to cover. It's a lot of information as well. Hope you took notes so that you can start implementing some of these strategies and things like that. Was glad to see that we got an 87% 5s. So I'm glad that you guys enjoyed the content, and that you found it helpful and valuable. Yes, Evan, there will be a recording. The Mayple team will shoot that out so you can circle back to that as well.
We'll try also to answer more questions that you've put here, and we didn't have enough time. So we'll put everything in the follow-up, including the Zapier integration some of you wanted. So definitely you'll get this as well. You can click on apply now on the STA. I just posted up here. Go through the funnel, schedule a meeting, see how we can help, if this is the right time. And if not, in any case, I hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope you can share it with others. So feel free to, tag us on social media, share this webinar once we share it with you, and looking forward to seeing you on our next ones.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. So guys, I'm going to hang around for, the next 15 or 20 minutes or so and go through these questions. So for anyone who wants to stay on and, ask any questions, feel free. I'm just going to sort of go one by one here. Pop those into the questions tab. Okay, can you show the GA report setup? Beck, would be hard to show you the GA report setup right now, but what I would say is if you look at the recording, look at those screenshots that, Beck, if you're still here, look at those screenshots of the reports, and you're going to go into custom reports in Google Analytics and just start playing around with it. When you see where there's a section for terms, that's where you're going to pull in those UTM tags, and you'll be able to build that report. So that's probably the best without going into super amount of detail there overall that I could touch on. Let's see, I'm just sort of scrolling in. Do improve tracking and send back. So Oren asks, what are the technical things we can do to improve tracking and send data back to Facebook? That's the Zapier integration with offline conversions. Also using Hyros to be able to see actual clicks to conversions. Hyros works off of UTM as well, in addition to other data points. But long story short is that Hyros data actually gets pushed back to your Facebook pixel. So I think Roy had asked a question. Problem is that Facebook algo is then optimizing based on false data. 100% accurate, which is why the more click to conversion data that you push back to the algorithm in time, you'll start to see improvements in performance there. So it does take time to do that. Dan Parak asked about Fixel rather. Dan, truthfully, have never tested or tried Fixel, but appreciate the heads up on that, and I'll definitely check it out. Let's see, there's a bunch of questions on this question one too. Would you go over how to set up okay, we just touched on that, Beck. Katia asked, do you have a preference of Facebook versus Google for someone brand new to advertising for a new e-com? Which would you recommend, and what are your 3 best practices? If you're just getting started, would for sure recommend Google first. It's going to be higher intent traffic, specifically starting with non-branded search and shopping campaigns. There's not any ad creative that you need to produce. You're not guessing on what the messaging should be as much. So Google would really be the place to start. However, pending the product and pending the brand, take this with a grain of salt, you probably have more scale on Facebook than you do specifically on Google. And when I mention Google, I don't include YouTube. So I would consider them separately, because obviously Google is going to be dependent upon search traffic there specifically. So depending on your product category, you could reach that cap at some point. So unless you're also running display ads, but I would recommend non-branded search and shopping for a newer brand there overall. Lamore asked, is the Zapier integration work for leads and click to call as well? Yes, it does, because I'm using it for my funnel. So you'll want to get that set up. You can actually use a Google Sheet. So I use a Google Sheet, and I have the Zapier integration go directly from the Google Sheet back to my Facebook pixel for all of my reason ads. So you can do that the same way. Luke asked, is setting all this up and sharing the email, phone, and number with Facebook GDR compliant? Yes, as far as I know, I'd say I'm 95% confident there, because it's third-party server-side data coming from Shopify. So since the data is coming from Shopify and you have that Facebook conversion API there, the conversion API is compliant. Feel free to follow up with me if that is contradictory there as well. Feel free to shoot me questions later on LinkedIn too, guys, if you want to. Katia asked again, where are you prioritizing what you optimize for? Is this in Shopify or Facebook Ad Manager? So when we were talking about aggregated event measurement, Katia, that's actually in Facebook Ads Manager in the events section of Ads Manager. Luke asked, how exact is a UTM? I found it not always portraying the truth. Do you see this as well? And how do you deal with this? A UTM is pretty much as close to the truth that you're probably going to get. It's because it's as long as the UTM is passed through the link, it should be able to be tracked. Obviously, there are scenarios where, people have pop-up blockers on, or they have, maybe they're using DuckDuckGo, which is like private browsing and things like that. And sometimes those variables won't get passed, but a click to a conversion is the closest thing that you can have to the truth. And that's what I was referring to, that like, you're not going to love what you're going to see, but I would much rather you guys get closer to the truth than like these bloated stats. If you've been in e-com for a while, these bloated stats that you would see in ad accounts and, things like that. Is Hyros the same as Hotjar or Lucky Orange? No, Hotjar and Lucky Orange are, why can't I think of the word? Heat mapping softwares. And so those are just more like user behavior on the actual landing page, whereas Hyros is all about tracking clicks to conversions so that you guys can optimize your campaigns. We just touched on that, Amika. Yes, sometimes UTMs do get cut off. Shopify is not the greatest about tracking UTMs, which is why you want to also be looking at that in Google Analytics as well. Roy asked, what is your average budget per ad set? Really going to depend on brand, but I'll give you a higher spending accounts, let's say $3,000 to $5,000 a day. Usually you're going to test at new creative at about $100 a day, which is exactly what we do for Mayple. On, lower spending accounts, like under $1,000 a day, anywhere from $25 to $50 a day ad set budgets. That way you can get that data within a 5 to 7 day window, and then start optimizing from there. So hopefully that helps. Beck also asked, how many creatives would you start with? If this question is more in reference to like a new account, I would start with a minimum of 4 creatives. and I would test 3 ad copy only, meaning that 3 times 4 equals 12. So you'll actually be able to get a massive amount of testing and create minimal variables between all of that entire setup. So when you're testing that creative, you'll really be able to identify what was the actual best copy and the best creative combination there overall. So hopefully that helps. Dan asked, recommend feed optimization platform for small e-commerce, data feed watch, God data feed, Channelable feed optimize. I'm assuming you're asking probably about Google ads here. As you know, there's a lot of different data feed options. A manual feed is going to be your most accurate, but it's a lot to manage, right? Usually the Google setup directly through Shopify is more than enough. Early on, sometimes that feed does break, so you want to be checking that feed probably weekly, and also integrating that with Google Merchant Center as well. Because sometimes every once in a while, you'll see products get disapproved and things like that for various reasons. So be sure to be checking your Google Merchant Center on that also. Cool. So Beck just dropped us a question again on a follow-up. So very sorry, but to clarify, if possible, 4 creatives, 3 versions of copy, and wait 7 days to see is what you recommend. Exactly, Beck. Spot on. Would I send them to all the same audience? So a little bit difficult here, overall. If you're starting a new ad account, this is what the true definition of a phase 1 testing campaign is. You want to minimize the amount of audiences as possible. So if you are just starting out, yes, I would recommend running those all to the same audience, because then you'll truly know which creative resonated with the audience the best. If you're starting out that account fresh, by definition, a lot of people would probably call me out and they would say, but there's audience overlap. And what I would tell you is that you want to be looking for which creative is engaging the best with the audience, and you're not running it long-term anyways. So for me, I'm not worried about audience overlap in that setup. What I'm looking for is the winning combination of copy and creative, and the exact winning combination of copy and creative, because this is how I create the winning ad formula. Once I know what the winning hook is, what the winning offer is, what the winning creative is, what the winning headline is, I can duplicate that out across carousels, GIFs, videos, additional static images, etc. And this is how, you're able to scale an account to thousands of dollars a day, because you're dialing in the winning ad formula through the control in this scientific experiment. So Beck, hopefully that helps you there. LV asked, what metric are you looking at when you do test with ad variable isolation? Right out of the gate, I'm looking at cost per acquisition. So I want to know if those 3 creatives are hitting my target cost. Return on ad spend is always going to vary. As an agency, like, this might sound unpopular, but we don't look at we look at return on ad spend, but we don't judge based on return on ad spend, because our return on ad spend is a reflection of average order value, right? Like, it takes into consideration 5 different data points, and I won't go into those, but return on ad spend can vary based on AOV. So if you're on this call still, and the 25 of you still are, so you're still hanging in there, and you want to increase your ROI, just go focus on upselling and increasing average order value. Do nothing different with your ads. Like, you will make bigger improvements in ROAS in the back end of the funnel than you will through ads. Unless you're an expert media buyer, like, you're going to have a tough time increasing your return on ad spend through the massive amount of variables that go into testing and scaling. Just go increase your AOV. Guaranteed to increase your return on ad spend. So I'm looking at CPA there, LV, and I'm looking at, was it ad number 1, number 2, or number 3, meaning my A copy, my B copy, or my C copy with this new ad that's performing the best. So like for us, we have specific KPIs that are part of our SOP, our operating procedure, of which we're testing on every time. So for you, I would recommend that you define what exactly it is that you're looking for and hold yourself to it and don't change it. Corin asked, with which attribution model do you track conversions on Google? I didn't hear that part. I think there are still about 7 attribution models on Google. Most often, you're going to operate on last click. I wouldn't recommend a hybrid model. It just starts to get messy with first and second touch attribution. If you incorporate for example, a Hyros or just a last click attribution model as a brand overall, then you're going to be able to look at that MER. You're going to be able to look at blended CPA and return on ad spend, just like we did with that Hyros screenshot where you saw that my Google spend was 12-1 and my Facebook spend was 1x, but I'm really like 7x blended and I'm crushing it, right? So like, that's why you need to look at it that way, because Facebook is pouring so much cold traffic into the system that if both of those channels are operating on different attribution, it goes back to the point of why you're not seeing the profit in your bank account, because you're judging those channels differently. You need to judge them the same way. Starting to get a little bit hoarse, but I think I covered most of it.
You lost your voice completely, I think, after this session.
Yeah, no kidding.
But you gave it all.
I gave it all. Like, yeah, guys, you got all the best stuff that I probably have. I'll hang around here for another minute or two if any of you have any additional questions. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap up here in the next minute or so.
Yeah, again, I want to say thank you so much for everyone that joined us and for everyone that stayed for the third part of the session into the questions. Yes. We would be more than happy and thrilled to have you with us, but in general, share, okay? Help us help others, help us, other people seeing this session if you felt it's valuable. And I hope to see you next time again.
Awesome. Great session. Thank you so much for being here, Rockafed. It's a pleasure as always.
Amazing as always.
Very good. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.